like to get started, please? Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the special budget hearing meeting. Pursuant to New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by advertising such notice in the Home News Tribune, the Asbury Park Press, the Board Office, the schools, and on Cablevision Channel 118 and Verizon Fios Channel 24, and by filing such notice with the Township Clerk. This meeting was scheduled for Thursday, April 27, 2017. The Board will meet to officially act upon the adoption of the 2017-2018 school year budget. Mr. Mara?
The Old Bridge Township Board of Education acknowledges that the law of this state establishes that members of the public, including members of the board, have the right to record public board meetings using audio or video recording devices, provided that that act of recording does not interfere with the business of this public board meeting. Therefore, the board makes it known that any such recording is to be considered the private recording of the individual and in no manner represents the official record of the board. The board therefore takes no responsibility for such private recording and completely disavows any future use.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. Can I hold off on roll call for a second, just to give them time to get seated? Okay. Ladies? Mr. Mara, roll call, please.
Andriani?
Present.
Callie?
Present.
Dunn? Here. Dinoff?
Present.
Ellis Foster?
Here.
Reed?
Here.
Singh? Weber? Here. DePrima?
Here. Thank you, Mr. Mara.
Quorum exists.
Could we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Good evening. Tonight is the presentation of the 2017-18 school year budget. I'm going to open it up to hearings of residents on agenda items only, if anybody has anything. Seeing no hands, we'll move on to the school year budget. Mr. Mara, please.
Okay, welcome to the public hearing to adopt the Old Bridge Township School District budget for 2017-2018. Could you get the presentation up on the TV, please? Okay, the outline for tonight's meeting is as follows. I will introduce the board members and the administrative team. I will discuss the budget process in terms of timelines. Mr. Cittadino will present and discuss the district goals and some student activities. Dr. Holker will discuss district accomplishments in 2016 and 2017, and she will also discuss the priorities of the 2017-18 budget. I will discuss district efficiencies, appropriations, revenue, and taxes, and Mr. Cittadino will do a final summary of the entire presentation. First, I'd like to introduce the board members, beginning with the board president, Mr. Salvatore DePrima. The vice president.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry, Joe.
The vice president, Mrs. Kelly Ellis Foster. Mrs. Donna Andriani, Mrs. Jill Calley, Mr. Richard Dunn, Mr. Jeffrey Dinoff, Mr. Walter Reed, and Mr. Frank Weber. From administration, I would like to introduce Mr. Cittadino. Dr. Hoker, Assistant Superintendent.
There you go.
Okay. Okay, that's it, you got it. And myself, I'm Joe Mara, the Business Administrator for the district. Okay, so we're going to go back to the presentation now on the TV. Okay. The timelines and the budget process. In October, the process begins with building the payroll budget, and budget information is requested from all administrators in the district. In November, we continue to develop the payroll budget by incorporating changes, modifying it for retirements, projected reassignments and additions, costs of employee benefits, tuition, transportation are projected, and all administrators submit their budget requests to the business office. In December, we continue to develop the payroll budget, again incorporating changes that are known, modifying it for retirements and additions. Administrative budget proposals are incorporated into the budget subject to the limitation not to exceed the prior year budget. Proposed new adoptions, professional services, and projects were also added during that month. In January, the leadership team met to determine the modifications to the budget. Maintenance and capital projects were prioritized and incorporated into the budget. In February, the Finance Committee of the Whole, met and reviewed the first draft of the administration proposed budget. The Finance Committee of the Whole supported the proposed budget, which maintained all existing programs, new adoptions, facilities projects, and utilization of district reserves, subject to, however, receipt of state aid notification without any reduction. In early March, the state aid notification was received without any state aid reduction, so we moved forward. At the March 7th agenda session, the budget was further discussed and an agreement was reached on the tentative budget. On March 14th, at the televised board meeting, the tentative budget was adopted by the Board of Education and approved for submission to the Executive County Superintendent. On April 8th, the Executive County Superintendent approved the tentative budget, which is the budget that is approved for advertising. The budget was advertised in the newspaper of record, the Home News Tribune, on April 23rd, 2017, and that brings us to where we are today at the public hearing to adopt the 2017-18 budget. Mr. Cittadino will now discuss student activities and district goals.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The district goals are as follows.
Develop a community input-driven strategic plan which engages our community members to identify future district needs relating to our growing diverse population. And that goal has been going on since the fall of this 2016-17 school year, and we have a culminating event on May 3rd, next week in the cafeteria at Old Bridge High School at 7 p.m., and we invite all members of the public, all of our stakeholders, to attend that event. To continue to increase learning opportunities or programs for multiple subgroups prevalent in our diverse school district. And right now, we're in year 2 of a 2-year goal. And lastly, to continue the infrastructure improvements as prescribed in our energy saving and improvement plan. You may hear that a reference to as the ESIP in the budget presentation going forward. First, looking at our high school students take part in varying activities. This year, for our transition students, we opened up a ShopRite satellite store right here on campus, in which students learn great marketing and employable skills that they can take once they graduate from Old Bridge High School. And that's the goal. And we see our Old Bridge High School students graduating from our facilities and going on to college and careers. While here, they take part in activities such as the ROTC, our trips to countries abroad, as these students are in Italy, and they celebrate their achievements, and on a very good year, have some celebrities come back home, like Lori Hernandez. The Old Bridge students, starting in our elementary schools and working their way through the secondary schools, have multiple activities which they can attend to, and we incorporate all of our community when they do so. We see our students using the Old Bridge rink for field trips. They take part in fundraisers to help out the less fortunate, such as our Kick Cancer soccer campaign between our 2 middle schools. They learn outdoor activities that incorporate the next generation science standards, such as gardening. And we see that our community embraces our new students as early as kindergartners and welcomes them into the school community. Our students are also very use technology to incorporate their studies, such as in the Hour of Code, which is used in every elementary school district-wide. Old Bridge High School and all of Old Bridge schools are based on 3 areas of studies within the academics, athletics, and the arts. Our students take part in learning activities such as music and dance, athletics, where they win championships, but they'll also do great things learning sportsmanship and friendship. Our students have gone on to win film awards and take part in performing arts as well. And we even had a student that left us this year, but not before he signed on to a Division I football for the University of Miami. Now, Dr. Hoker will take us through some of those accomplishments that were highlighted in the pictures, and then some.
Good evening. In 2016-17, the Old Bridge community worked collaboratively to defeat the charter school application. We implemented at Cooper, Madison Park, and Memorial Schools the first Ed Camp professional opportunity. We launched the Old Bridge Professional Learning Academy, where we utilize our own expert staff to provide professional development throughout the year. Old Bridge schools were recognized for best staff professional development practices by the New Jersey Department of Education. We opened the satellite ShopRite store in Old Bridge High School, run through our transition program. All curriculum are up to date and in compliance with state and national standards. We continued the Journeys Literacy program into the 2nd grade. Old Bridge students study in Europe and Asia. Shiraz School park scores were in the top 20 in the state. Cheesequake School nominated to apply for National Blue Ribbon of Excellence. Old Bridge was named the 6th safest place in the nation to raise a child. The Old Bridge School District is a National District of Character with 14 National Schools of Character and 1 school currently recognized this year as a State School of Character and pending the news of national recognition. That's Sauk Middle School. Cooper, Memorial, and Shepherd Schools received National Promising Practice Awards for their programs Readers of the Pack, Husky Pawing Pillows, and Disability Awareness. Since 2012, we've received 11 Promising Practice Awards. This year, in 2017, we are awaiting news of 11 applications from our schools for Promising Practice. Old Bridge was recognized as a state model for intervention services by the Department of Education. We have expanded response to intervention, resulting in continued decline of referrals to special education and an increase in declassification of students. In athletics, field hockey and boys basketball had the best record in school history. Boys winter track won the GMC relay and team championships. Track star Ray Rivera is nationally ranked and ran the 4th fastest 800-meter in U.S. history. This is the first year girls swimming qualified for the state tournament. Cheerleading holds the red division title and competed in the national championship. This is the first ever spring tailgate was created to recognize spring sports. In addition, we've upgraded telephone systems, equipment district-wide, including in classrooms. We implemented the Synesis point-to-point private fiber-wide area network between all buildings. We launched the payroll portal for online employee access to check history, W-2s, 1095s, forms, attendance, demographic, and health benefits records. The budget priorities for the 2017-18 school year include aligning the science curriculum resources with next-generation science standards, to provide clinical therapeutic support for at-risk students through effective school solutions, to continue the expansion of the Journeys Literacy Program into grades 3, 4, and 5, to continue the expansion of response to intervention services to secondary education, to meet the educational, social, emotional, and physical needs of all students, to expand professional development options, support PARC through software, hardware, and professional development, to continue to support the provisions of Achieve New Jersey, and to continue with facility upgrades. Mr. Mara?
Thank you, Dr. Hooker. In January of this year, Mr. Cittadino and I met with state and county officials and reviewed various cost ratios and calculations relating to our district. A sample of what was discussed at that meeting, and in terms of our district and in comparison to other districts, statewide and regionally, our district's budgeted cost per student is less than the statewide average and in comparison to other similarly sized districts. Our administrative cost per student is less than the statewide average and also in comparison to other similarly sized districts. Our support cost per student is less than the statewide average and other similarly sized districts. And the ratio of administrators to faculty is much less than other districts similarly sized to ours. The source of all of these statistics are included in or originate in the Taxpayer Guide to Education on the New Jersey Department of Education website. There are many more statistics available. Those are only a few, but those are the ones that we discussed at the county meeting. But please take the time to look at how our district compares to other districts in the state and other districts of our size, and I think you would be very proud of the accomplishments that we've made. To continue with efficiencies, we developed last year an Energy Savings Improvement Plan, an ESIP. Just to review the process briefly, beginning in September 2015, the process to develop the plan began. And the process was that we were required to do a request for a proposal for an energy services company, an ESCO. The process was lengthy. It required approval from the Office of State Controller and the Bureau of Public Utilities. In February 2016, Honeywell was appointed the ESCO, the Energy Savings Company. From that point forward, the responsibility of the ESCO, or Honeywell, was to develop plans to maximize our energy efficiencies with facilities upgrades and thereby reducing our energy usage and reducing our energy costs. The planned upgrades, modifications, and additions to the district facilities are expected to cost $16.4 million. Solar panels will be installed on 8 buildings. Major portions of those buildings will have their roofs replaced. LED lighting fixtures will be installed district-wide. Boilers and control systems will be installed that are the latest technology. These projects should take at least or approximately 18 months to complete. And the entire project would be budget neutral or, to put it another way, will not cost the taxpayer any funds in terms of the local tax levy. Financing of the $16.4 million is over a 15-year period, and the energy cost savings and the rebates generated by the upgrades will cover the annual cost of the financing. Zero-based budgeting. The district utilizes zero-based budgeting for most appropriation lines, for example, payroll, benefits, commercial insurance, workers' comp insurance, just to mention a few. The district also has numerous shared services agreements with other governmental agencies. With these agreements, our district shares in the expertise developed by these other entities without having to develop each operation or function from scratch. Some examples of shared services agreements, and specifically with the Old Bridge Township, are security services, fuel purchases, bus transportation, the before and after care services that are in our schools, and sports facilities, just to mention a few. The district belongs to numerous cooperative purchasing groups statewide. A co-op purchasing group consists of a large number of entities that have similar needs in terms of what they purchase. One lead member goes out to bid for all these projects, for all these products on behalf of all the members, and the members receive the benefit of the pricing of the bid proposals awarded. Our food service in our 16 schools or 17 schools is profitable, and while we transport approximately 10,000 students to and from school daily, we have one of the best efficiency and safety records in the state. Appropriations. On this slide, I have summarized the budget into 7 categories. I'll discuss program costs last, which will be the next slide. However, the district will spend 2.65% more in 2017 and 18 than was budgeted in 16-17. Numerous capital and maintenance projects will be undertaken, and for example, in Sandburg, the main facility electrical feed is being replaced at an approximate cost of $500,000. The obsolete security camera system at the high school and grade 9 center will be replaced and integrated with the district-wide security camera system. And new adoptions, approximately $500,000, $250,000 of that for the science curriculum, and $250,000 for expanded professional services are also included in this budget. The employee benefits line, which is approximately 20% of the budget, contains costs for health, prescription, dental, and vision insurance for employees, workers' compensation costs, pension costs, payroll taxes, and other employee benefits. The projected increase is 4.19%, and the increase is principally due to cost increases in medical insurance premiums of 12%, prescription benefits of 7%, and dental benefits of 12%. The maintenance and operation line, which is about 10% of the budget, contains costs for required maintenance, snow removal, custodial services, security, and energy costs. The transportation line, which is about 6% of the budget, contains costs for salaries to operate a fleet of approximately 43 of our own buses, contracted services with outside vendors that provide busing for 10,000 students daily, fuel costs, maintenance of our own buses, and administration of that entire operation. The administrative cost line, again, it's about 6% of our budget, contains the cost of the main offices of all the schools, the superintendent's office, the business office, district-wide technology. The tuition cost line, which is about 2.4% of the budget, contains costs for out-of-district placements for special ed students and tuition for students that attend vocational schools. And the capital outline, which is about 1.4% of the budget, contains costs for instructional and non-instructional equipment and facilities upgrades. The program costs, and this slide is an analysis of all of those costs in the districts, which represents slightly more than 50% of all district costs, or $80 million. And I'm going to give you a brief description of what is contained in each line item. Regular programs contain all regular costs, or all costs for regular education for kindergarten through grade 12, and these costs are teacher salaries, instructional supplies, and textbooks. Special ed programs, and those programs that we have in our district are first a cognitive mild program. We have a learning and/or language disabilities program. We have a behavioral disabilities program. We have a multiple disabilities program. We have a resource center program. We have an autism program. We have a preschool disabled program that's half day, and we also have a preschool disabled program that's full day. In each one of these categories, we have costs for teacher salaries, paraprofessional aides, and all instructional supplies related to those individual programs. The basic skills or academic support program contains costs for teacher salaries, again, paraprofessional aides, and any instructional supplies they may need. Our bilingual program is also contains costs for teacher salaries, paraprofessional aides, and instructional supplies. The co-curricular line contains costs for all of these stipends that are paid to coaches and for club teachers that manage clubs, and supplies and equipment for our sports teams. We have an alternative program, a course credit recovery program, which is an after-school program which enables students to make up credits so that they can graduate. The next group of costs, beginning with attendance, are district-wide costs. Attendance contains the salary of the attendance officers. Our health line contains all the salaries of our nurses that we have in all our buildings and whatever supplies they need to manage the nurse's office in the building. The speech program contains the salaries of the speech teachers and any professional services they require, plus the supplies that they need to administer their program. Extraordinary services programs are professional services required for students that have individual education programs or IEPs. The guidance line contains counselor salaries, supplies, and services to assist students at all grade levels. The child study team contains salaries for learning consultants, social workers, and psychologists. The development of IEPs is within this group, and also any professional services that are required. The improvement of instruction line contains the salaries of all the district supervisors. The educational media services line contains the salaries of all our librarians, their supplies, periodicals, AV materials, and library books. And in the world we live in now, the license fees associated with the programs that they supply to the students. The instructional staff training line is where the funds are appropriated to do professional development for our staff and also for curriculum writing. The next slide relates to capital outlay, and this slide is a summary of the capital expenditures that are included in the 2017-18 budget. We will be spending $100,000 on instructional equipment, $150,000 on district-wide technology infrastructure. We will be doing $1,750,000 on facility upgrades. As I already mentioned, I believe the $750,000 on the security camera upgrade at the high school and the grade 9 center, the Sandberg electrical feed upgrade for $500,000. We will be repairing a section of the Salk roof for $225,000. We will be replacing the generator at Salk for $120,000. We are investing $100,000 into playgrounds this year, and we will be doing some bathroom renovations for $55,000 this year. In addition, an emergency generator is being installed at Sandberg, which is being funded by a grant, and it does not affect this budget. The cost is approximately $640,000, of which $600,000 is grant funded. This project is being combined with the Sandberg electrical upgrade, and the Sandberg school will be closed for the entire summer in 2017 for this upgrade. The next two items on the schedule are the SDA assessment and capital reserve transfer. These are mandated numbers that are provided by the state. We have no choice other than to book these as disbursement for the district. The following slide is a presentation in a pie format of a $150 million budget. After reviewing all these areas, you have a better understanding of what's contained in each, and you can see that the bulk of the costs are in programmatic costs, 53%, employee benefits 20%, maintenance and transportation another 16%, and that's almost 90% of the budget. The largest increases in this budget are, the first one is in salaries and wages. We expect salaries to increase by approximately $1.86 million. The projected cost for medical benefits, health benefits, is $1.2 million. And although we defeated the charter school application in town this year, our charter school costs to other charter schools that are in the neighboring communities will be up 32% or $48,980. The revenue page, the revenue slide, the recommendation and a decision was made at the committee of the whole meeting in February that we would utilize district reserve to fund many of the 2017-18 initiative projects and health insurance costs. $2 million from capital reserves will be used to fund district projects that are on the long-range facility plan. $900,000 will be funded from maintenance reserve to fund remediation of code compliance issues and required maintenance. and $501,000 from emergency reserves will be used to contribute to health care costs. Mandated reserves or restricted reserves being utilized in this budget is $4,076,288. These mandated reserves are a result of prior year unbudgeted revenues received or unspent appropriations that exceeded the allowable 2% of reserves of the district's annual expenditures. Unrestricted reserves in the amount of $504,028 are being used to fund the district's new adoptions, the science curriculum upgrade, and the additional professional services. The next item on the schedule is called bank cap. Bank cap, this number is a state calculation which indicates how much a district may go beyond the 2% local tax levy cap to fund the operating budget. Utilization of bank cap requires justification to and approval from the executive county superintendent. In 2017 and 2018 budget, we have requested the usage of $598,017 of bank cap, which was approved by the county superintendent. Where does bank cap come from? First, it is not cash that's set aside, it's a state calculation. Very simply put, the calculation identifies that the local tax levy is $2,068,381. That's after the utilization of the $598,000 that we're asking to use in 17-18, lower than it would have been if the district elected to raise taxes during the last 3 years up to an amount that was allowed by law. The bank cap is only available or accumulates for 3 years and then expires. This is a rolling calculation, and it is only to be used to go above the 2% cap. The automatic cap adjustment for health care costs, as a result of the projected increase in health care costs, an automatic cap adjustment to exceed the 2% tax levy was available and is being utilized in the amount of $140,283 to fund next year's health care costs. Revenues. The first item on the revenue page is called budgeted fund balance. When a district approves its budget, the budget is a tool to manage the district finances, and it contains numerous estimates in terms of revenue and expenditures. To the extent that revenues received exceed the revenues budgeted, that excess revenue goes into fund balance. To the extent that actual expenditures are less than expenses appropriated, that underspent appropriation goes into fund balance. The district may only maintain 2% of the previous year's expenditures in unrestricted fund balance. However, there are some short-term exceptions to that rule. Anything over that amount has to be transferred by board resolution each year in June to either capital reserve, maintenance reserve, or emergency reserve, or it is returned to the taxpayer in the form of taxpayer relief or budgeted fund balance, a revenue item that we're talking about now. In the alternative, though, we are funding many of the projects that we're doing this year, the facilities projects, with capital reserve and maintenance reserve, and as a result, that burden is not placed on the local taxpayer in the current year. The reserve withdrawal line represents the withdrawals from the restricted reserve accounts to fund this year's projects and healthcare costs, i.e. capital, maintenance reserve, and emergency reserves. The local tax levy line is the assessment to the local taxpayers, and this proposed budget requires a 2.79% tax increase. The state aid line has remained the same as last year. However, the mandated charter school tuition that I mentioned before has increased $48,000, and we have no say other than to pay that money to the charter schools. This places the bulk of the burden of all cost increases on the local taxpayer. And I make this statement every year, because as long as the state aid remains flat, the burden will always fall on the local taxpayer. The other state aid line is extraordinary aid, which is aid that we receive for extraordinary costs incurred relating to special needs students. The other revenue line is any other revenue that cannot be categorized in any of the other categories. Examples are interest income, facilities fees, cell tower revenue, tuition revenues, and any type of refunds that we receive from prior years. Now the tax calculation. This slide represents information necessary to calculate the tax rate and its impact on the average homeowner. The tax levies shown here are for 2 years and are averaged. The tax rateable base is divided by $100, and that becomes the basis to calculate the tax rate. So $95,021,750 is divided by the tax rateable base at the tax rate. Note that the tax rateable base increased significantly this year by $14,872,697 and has increased in each of the last 3 years. Therefore, a local tax levy increase of 2.79% to maintain all existing programs will cost the average home assessed in Old Bridge at $152,500. It will cost that homeowner $89.18 per year, or $7.43 per month. I thank you very much for your attention and patience through this long presentation. And please note that once this budget is approved, a user-friendly budget will be posted on the district website shortly thereafter. And with that, I will hand it over to Mr. Cittadino.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mara, for that very in-depth and informative explanation of the budget. So to summarize, the proposed budget for 2017-18 maintains all existing educational programs, provides funding to ensure all curriculum and resources are aligned with state standards, such as we talked about the alignment of the science curriculum with the resources we are budgeting for the next generation science standards. It continues the expansion of technology that is necessary for the 21st century and assessment, such as the park. Provides academic, social, and emotional support and mechanisms for all learners, regardless of their talents and or abilities, such as bringing in effective school solutions to support the emotional needs of our students. And continues the facilities modifications to comply with all regulations and the occupant needs, such as our security upgrades and the ESIP. And that is the summary of this budget. Thank you.
Excuse me. Mr. Mara, Mr. Cittadino, Dr. Holker, thank you so much for your in-depth explanation. Colleagues, I need a motion to move item 1 under the 2017-2018 school year budget.
Dunn will make a motion to move the 2017-2018 school year budget, Mr. President.
Mr. Dunn, thank you. In a second?
I will second it.
Ms. Ellis Foster, thank you. Okay, discussion and or questions? Start. Okay. As a suggestion, we're going to open it up to the public again on this particular item, if anybody has any comments or concerns or questions. Seeing no hands, I guess we'll go back to the board discussion. Mr. Weber, I guess you want to start?
On page 13, budgetary cost per pupil, which is from the Taxpayers Guide to Education Spending. I just have a question, Joe, that I know the numbers are correct. The state is higher than we are, which it should be. There are some close to 600 districts in the state, and New Jersey, Old Bridge is in one of the groups, which is a K-12 district with over 3,800. There are 103 districts in the state who have that same classification. Now, they range from the Jersey cities of the world, the A districts, to districts all over the state, different socioeconomic groupings, but that's the group that we're generally in. We're approximately somewhere around number 20 in the size of the state. So just by simple kind of business logic, we should be considerably more efficient than the state averages. So that's not a surprise. I mean, it's not a bad thing, certainly, but we should be there. One of the things that they do within that is they, being the state New Jersey Department of Education, they rate you on your costs as a numerical number saying where you stand out of those 103. We rank 37th of the 103. Now, if we're approximately the 20th largest, you would hope that we would be higher up on that number than 37. We have been in years past. We've been as low as 19 or 22, and it varies from year to year, but we've generally been in and at that group. More recent years, and I say more recent, the last 6 or 7, we've been in the high 20s and in some cases the low 30s. Similar districts, I'm not sure what that means. I don't know that. I don't know where those districts were gathered from, but you can see they're also lower than the state average, but we're showing there as well. The other thing is the charter school issue, I think, is an extremely volatile, major issue. You could say this applicant shot himself in the foot, but I don't think he could hit his foot, apparently. The application was so bad, I know that there was a strong effort from Old Bridge, but I think more of this is this candidate did not submit a valid application. Other groups that have been associated with this candidate include one that's in Franklin Township, which is a Blue Ribbon charter school. So I don't expect charter schools to go away anytime soon. It may not be this application next year or this applicant next year, but it's going to be other ones. We've already had an increase from a start of $40,000 for an existing school in East Brunswick, which is now, I talked to Mr. Merritt today, I believe it's up to $200,000 a year, Joe? And that's going to continue to grow. We've got a fix now where in some cases, we can take this bank cap that we haven't used, and we're taking $575,000 in this budget, and we have another $2 million. But that can run out awfully quickly. I think one of the things that we have to do, and particularly with strategic planning coming up that we haven't been diligent about, is we've lost 1,000 students since 2001 and 12. That's 15 years. And in 2006 and 7, we had 9,800. We're down to 8,818. Again, these are the state numbers, so they're 95% accurate. Yet we really, in my opinion, have not done enough to look for efficiencies in-house to reduce our costs in operating the district. I think we really need to focus on that if we're going to have a chance to fund the charter students. Now, regardless of what your opinion is on charters, whether you like them, you hate them, it's somewhat academic. They have a state right at this point, and they're supported pretty much in the concept by the federal government as well, to get tax dollars from us that they've paid as taxes. They get them back if they meet the criteria for the state to run a charter school. They're not necessarily taking your money. They're taking the money they've paid in taxes. Now, I'm not for or against charter schools, but you need to recognize they have a legal standing and they have a legal recourse to take money and impact this district. And if we don't have our own house in order in terms of trying to reduce costs, that $2 million that we have in bank capital can go pretty quick. And my question is going to be, we don't want to get some surprise 2 years down the road and say, well, it's not my fault. The charter schools took all our money. So I'm suggesting that we really need to focus on getting our own house in order from an economic standpoint. Now, there's another cost that's in that summary, Joe, and I can't get it open on my phone now, but it shows a total cost per student for district, which is not the budgetary number of $14,823. It is $18,214 per student. Now, it's consistent. Everybody's got it on their line in the district as well, in theirs. So, and on the assumption that that's correct, that means it's actually another $3,500 that it's costing you. What the difference is between that number and the budgetary cost per pupil should be in the report, but it is there. It's listed as the top, it's listed as the column above the budgetary line. So it's an awful lot of money, and I understand the charter people, and I'm asking this as a question to you, Joe, the charter people get funded by a formula against what the state says should be the required cost to fund it. Is that correct?
The state has a formula that they've developed, which frankly, I don't understand.
Okay.
And what happens is like when we received and why I link the discussion of state aid to charter school discussion is that when we received the state aid notice, at the same time, that's when they tell us how much, and we have no options here, but they tell us how much we have to pay the following charter schools next year. That number is revised in June. Some
Okay.
districts it goes up, some districts it goes down. I believe it's revised again in December, and then it is revised again in May. So the charter schools change, what we pay them could change during the year. And it is always possible that if a charter school's failing, that we would have prepaid expenses at the end of a year because we've paid them for more than what they're entitled to. But I have not seen that with the charter school that we are sending most of our money to, but I have seen that in other charter schools.
Okay. And on the subject of state aid, just to digress a little bit, Middlesex County has two aid districts, Perth Amboy and New Brunswick, who clearly get the largest amount of state aid of any two districts in Middlesex County. We're the third largest town, the obvious two being Edison and Woodridge, who are 50% again larger than we are. Old Bridge Township receives more state aid than any other of the non-Abbott districts in the county, far and away, over twice as much. And our residents, although we certainly all feel we pay too much, actually pay a lower percentage than most other districts, where it comes out of the local taxpayer's pocket. I just wanted to make you aware of that. I personally am not going to support this budget because I think that we need really to start that process of maintaining our costs or trying to reduce our cost, because we are going to get ready for this, what I think is going to be an onslaught from the charter schools coming for things, and I don't want it to come as a tsunami in 1 year when the next thing you know, a school opens and 2 years down the road, we're paying for 500 or 600 of them. So that's my point.
Mr. President, may I just make a comment? In reference to your comment about other districts and the amount of state aid that they receive as it compares to ours, it's kind of a strange situation. In those districts where the local tax levy is a much greater percentage of the total budget, those districts are able to accommodate the cost increases much more easily because that's where the 2% grows. So our position is actually better than their position. We receive more state aid, and over the last few years we've had to use bank cap, but we're far below where those districts are in terms of what their local tax levy is. So I think our position is much better than theirs. However, they do have the ability to, with their 2% increase, to cover the cost of the annual increases of salaries and medical benefits better than we do. So when we hit years where there are 12% increase in health benefits and, you know, a 17% benefit in cost increase in prescriptions, it becomes difficult because our tax levy is lower than theirs and we have to use bank cap. So
And so to your point with the $2 million of bank cap that we have now, I certainly would like to hopefully see that in place, so when those things come in, like a massive health increase or something untoward outside of the charter school, those funds remain available. So that's where I think we need to tighten the ship.
What we've done is this year, in past years, we put money into emergency reserve, $500,000, and we can use money from emergency reserve to cover healthcare costs. So since we've seen such substantial increases in healthcare costs over the last few years, my intention will be to recommend to the board, if possible, to again put money in emergency reserves so that we do not affect the bank cap, and thereby saving the taxpayer from, it will prevent us from having to go over the 2% tax levy by using the emergency reserve for healthcare costs.
Thank you, Mr. Weber, Mr. Mara. I think we'll go in order this way. Mr. Reed, anything? No? Thank you. Mr. Dinoff?
Yes, I would just like to say first that reviewing and passing a budget is one of the most important yet difficult and time-consuming tasks of a Board of Education, and especially this year when we had so many unknown factors, most notably the charter school application that was fortunately defeated due to everyone's commitment and hard work. So we do have some great new adoptions and much needed ones funded through this budget under unrestricted fund balance. These include the much-needed science curriculum updates and textbooks that I know our students and faculty can certainly speak firsthand to the need to. Also, our special services program, which will hopefully enhance education in a cost-effective manner for many students. And also, there are many beneficial new adoptions that we had to defer through future years in order to maintain fiscal responsibility for the taxpayers of the community. As mentioned, with infrastructure and maintenance, we do have over $3 million from reserve accounts, and while it may seem like we're depleting these accounts, we do have the Energy Services Improvement Plan, and it's anticipated that we won't need to be spending as much in this area in the future because many of the improvements will be warranted and they'll be guaranteed. So that's why we are able to deplete these accounts a certain extent. Also, the $500,000 from the emergency reserve account, I did some research just to see, because we are basically removing all the total funds of that account, and a lot of districts actually don't have an emergency reserve account. I know from being in NJ's, the state school board rep, and I spoke to colleagues in other districts, and it can be used for three things: health insurance, supplements, as we've seen with our district right now, true emergencies, and also security purposes. So that's why we're also using the $500,000 for the emergency reserve account. Something that I'd like to see us work on in the future for an improvement is the budgeted fund balance line. These are funds that are earmarked for the next year, basically to supplement the next year's budget. And I would like to see us work gradually to reduce this. I know it's very difficult because we have ever-increasing costs, and it's very difficult to remove some of those funds into reserve accounts. But I think in the future we really have to look to try to do that, even if it's gradually a few $100,000 a year. I think that's very important. And in summation, I guess that's all. Thank you very much to Mr. Mara for his detailed presentation today, and thank you for the entire administrative team for their dedication and for always answering all our questions, even when we have many, many pages and hours worth of them. And thank you again for the entire community to really coming together to combat the charter school application, because without that, it would be a much different conversation tonight and a more negative and gloomy one. So thank you, everyone, for your support, and I'll be supporting this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dinoff. Mrs. Ellis-Foster?
Sure, thank you. So as Mr. Danoff said, this is one of the hardest things we have to do, but we all are taxpayers, so we understand the burden that the decision makes. But if you look at the growth and the improvements in the district over the last couple of years, the last thing we can do is to start to cut those. We've seen great progress just in our meeting on Tuesday. We've seen great progress in the RTI program. And if you look at all of our other programs, some great opportunities. I don't think you would go to one parent and have them say, my child has everything and does not need one more thing from this district. So there is always the need to continue to improve and to grow. We rely more and more on technology. In the long run, hopefully some of that will reduce costs, but there's also great cost to keep all that up to date. I agree with Mr. Weber in that we probably aren't the most efficient by having 12 elementary schools. But I think that's what makes us Old Bridge. and our families pay maybe a premium for that neighborhood school. It's that neighborhood school that's the foundation, and I think in the long run, it might cost a little extra money and may not be the most efficient, but that is what we want for our children. So, we're Old Bridge, that's what we do. If you look at the programs, it's keeping everything going, it's adding a little bit. If we were to cut anything, it's taking a step back, and I just don't think we can afford that, more so because of our children. I can tell you, Mr. Mara is extremely frugal with the money, and he makes sure we always have the best, Mr. O'Neill would attest, that whenever going out for expenditures, that we are looking at the best pricing that are available. That's why we have so many consortiums that we work with to make sure that we are getting the best for our dollars. So I would like to thank again everybody, the whole staff, Mr. Mara's staff, the central administration, all the principals and the local level at the schools that put together all the money. I know they're asked to do a lot, but it's important. So I will be supporting the budget.
Thank you, Mrs. Ellis-Forster. If it's okay, I'll leave my comments for last. We'll go to Donna, Mrs. Andriani.
Good evening. I have to agree with everybody. Mr. Weber has some great comments, and we need to look and see where we can be a little more efficient. Mr. Dinoff, Ms. Ellis-Forster, great comments as well. But I sit here and I want the public to know that this is not, the budget is not something that we just check off and say, okay, let's move on. Every single person on this board has an opinion, and maybe you don't hear it, but we hear it amongst ourselves. There is lively discussion all the time about, are we sure this person is the right person for the position that we're looking for? Where do we get the money from to fund this if we're going to increase or expand this program? Where can we save money with this? Does this group, it's a Peter and Paul situation sometimes. And Mr. Mara does do a great job in making sure that those purchase orders that come through and the administrative team make sure that, the budgetary spending is checked over and over again. And to make a decision on what we continue and what we would cut is a very difficult one. I sat on the board many years ago with several of my colleagues here where the state came in and said, sorry, you're several $1 million that we're taking away and you have to cut programs. And the upheaval and the amount of comments that we got from parents, how could you cut that team? Why are you taking this teacher away? Well, we had a shortfall. It wasn't anything that we had planned for. It had to do with state funding, but it was money we had expected. And everyone was unhappy. So when we sit and we discuss the budget and we say we don't have enough money to keep these programs going, what do we cut? Do we cut the internet? Do we take the computers out? Do we not buy new ones or replace them when they get older? Do we not put a new roof on the building? Do we not get new books when we need them or new software? Do we cut out the freshman and JV teams or the middle school teams? And then where's the support for the varsity teams for that? Do we take away AP courses? Do we cut the marching band? Do we cut out auto shop? Where is it that we go? Because every child here is deserving of the best that we can provide. And this administration and this board strives for progress and strives for excellence. And there's a cost factor in all of that. And yes, I would like to be more efficient, but believe me, the watchdogs are here and they are watching, we're watching the money. It may not seem so, but we certainly are. And I will support the budget because I do not want to be the person who says we need to cut any type of progressive program, whether it's language, whether it's academic excellence, whatever it is. We do good things here. A lot of it is non-tangible, whether it's character ed or the possibility of a blue ribbon school. We do good things here. We're Old Bridge proud. And I think we need to continue to support that for the benefit of our children and our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Andriani. Mrs. Kelly?
Okay, there isn't much I can add to what Donna just said. I just wanted to thank Mr. Mara and his team and the administrative team for all of their hard work. And I am echoing comments of my colleagues and thanking everybody for their help in the defeating of the charter school, or this would be a much different conversation we'd be having this evening. And the one thing, I can't really elaborate anymore on what Mrs. Andriani eloquently said, but what we
I
offer...
forgot the 20 buildings, but okay, that we have to maintain.
We have to maintain 20 buildings. There you go. No, seriously, what we offer our students is what makes us Old Bridge. It's what, we're constantly improving in our reputation, and our students are improving. The schools that they are getting into, higher education, the colleges and the universities, are improving is not the right word, but everything is going in an upward direction. And what we offer the students is what is pushing our students in that upward direction. So I am going to support the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kelly. Mr. Dunn?
Good evening. First, I want to sincerely thank Joe Mara and his wonderful team, along with the administration, in putting together this incredible budget. It's $151 million. $96 million comes from the local tax levy, and about $55 million comes from the state. So it's a monumental task, and I want to thank them for their hard work, because they have a job to prove to the board that our house is in order financially. And they've done a good job in convincing many of the board members that our house is in order. With that said, there's going to be many challenges in years to come in putting together budgets because we are running at a banked cap. And that's been the mechanism that we've used in prior years to keep the local tax levy under control. So it's going to be a monumental task for this board going forward and future boards to make sure that we are wise and perform our fiduciary responsibilities, because we have to not only provide the finest education to our children, but we also have a responsibility in protecting the taxpayer at the same time. The budget process is a very difficult process on all board members, because we all have different opinions and we all have different goals, and we understand that we need to do what's in the best interest, because we are in the business of educating our students. One thing I can say without hesitation is that this board and previous boards have put together an incredible educational enrichment program for this district. And we have been seeing the incredible strides. We have seen the incredible results in our programs. And the proof is in the pudding. We see it. That's what we're here to do, is to ensure that we give the finest education to our children. That is our obligation to our children. That's what a community does as their gift, to ensure that children have the finest education. So it's always a very difficult task to find an even keel when you're dealing with budgets and putting things together. And I echo my colleague on the other end, Mr. Weber, that it will be challenging in the years to come. But that's our job, is to deal with it and make sure that future budgets are in order and that we can fund the finest educational system possible. One thing I want to stress is that this board takes this job very seriously. And I believe the budget that's been proposed this evening and has been approved by the county is in the best interest of Old Bridge Township Public Schools and its children. We've come a long way in our educational enrichment, and it's evident. And I'm not going to take a step back in time. The money is wisely spent. The money is spent in the best interest of our children and in this town. One thing I have to say is that since our educational system has improved vastly in the last 5 to 6 years, our home values have increased based upon what this Board of Education and administration has done. People who want to move into Old Bridge realize that this educational foundation is what they want, and that's what drives them to move here and to be residents. And as we continue to ensure that we perform and give the best education, we're going to have new residents move in and pay more for homes. So for me, I'm going to support this budget. I think it's in everyone's best interest to support this budget for the betterment of our children. But don't forget, we do have that fiduciary responsibility at the same time to support the taxpayer and make sure we spend the money wisely. So with that said, I just want to make it known that I will be voting yes, and I think that we did an admirable job in ensuring that we are doing our fiduciary responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Okay, in going last, I pretty much repeat what everybody else said. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. One of the most difficult tasks we are charged with is the budget. Nobody up here wants to raise taxes. We're all residents, too. But I do credit Mr. Mara and Central Administration for their hard work in presenting a fair and reasonable budget. We do appreciate your hard work. You know, on a personal note, I moved here about 23 years ago. My children were very young, and we were told the school district was pretty good. It was nice. Now people that move here, they're told the school district is a great district. With greatness, you know, comes expense, unfortunately, but in order to keep our status quo and to move forward to where we need to be, it costs us. So, you know, it's unfortunate, but that's part of it. Much of our budget, excuse me, is state mandated. We have no choice in that. With this budget, we are able to maintain current programs, add new ones. We can update our technology, safety, and communications, all of which are for the children. Our special ed program, I see Dr. Toohey in the audience, our special ed program is second to none. And as Mr. Mara said, we do continue to have a low per pupil cost. With all that being said, I too will be supporting the budget. Anybody else have anything to add? Mr. Mara, roll call.
Andriani,
Yes.
Callie,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes.
Dinoff,
Yes.
Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Weber, DePrima.
Yes.
The 2017-18 budget passes.
Thank you, everyone, for your input, opinions, hard work. Moving on, hearing of residents on any school district issue. Seeing no hands. Make a motion for adjournment.
Dunn will make a motion.
Mr. Dunn?
Dinoff will second.
Mr. Dinoff. Mr.
All in
Mann?
favor?
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.